All right, happy new year to you all. Happy 2025. And for the first video of this year, what better way to start things out than with a predictions video? And yes, we will cover price. You'll have to wait till the end or skip ahead if that's what you care about. But we're gonna cover a lot of other very important aspects to all of this. We're gonna cover adoption predictions. We're gonna cover predictions related to the Bitcoin network itself, technology within Bitcoin, and more. You're not gonna wanna miss a thing. And so without further ado, let's jump into 25 predictions for 2025. All right, we're gonna start things off with adoption related predictions. So prediction number one, we will see at least one smaller sovereign, such as El Salvador, adopt Bitcoin, meaning they adopt an actual strategic reserve of Bitcoin and make it legal tender in some fashion. Now, many of you will have seen the recent news that El Salvador sort of walked back a little bit on its Bitcoin adoption in response to demands from the IMF for a loan that El Salvador was looking to get. So that's actually really interesting. But basically, it is now simply the case that businesses in El Salvador, it is voluntary if they want to accept payments in Bitcoin or not, instead of requiring them to accept Bitcoin payments. So interesting there. But nonetheless, I think we will see more in 2025 on this. However, related to this, I think the bigger story at the sovereign level is going to be less around strategic reserves and more around using Bitcoin for trade settlement. We just saw this news out of Russia where their finance minister is saying Bitcoin is already being used in foreign trade. A lot of this, of course, goes all the way back to the US sanctions and different things like that. So I think we're going to see a nutty amount of sovereign level Bitcoin adoption, but I don't think it's going to be where people think it is, which is on the strategic reserve side of things, but we'll see. Prediction number two, the US will not implement any sort of buying or strategic buying plan related to Bitcoin. And I know I'm starting off with some less fiery or less bullish predictions here, but just calling it like I see it, I think no doubt the US and the incoming administration will be a lot more supportive of the industry. I think we will see benefits on the margin, right? Trump really does have this kind of Margaret Thatcher-like opportunity where look at all these kind of millennials that can't afford anything and, you know, Bitcoin and digital assets are their sort of only hope, right? Like he has the opportunity to make those people wealthy. And for that party, the Republican Party, will have their loyalty for a very long time. So I no doubt think it's going to be supportive, but I don't think it's going to be what people are hoping in terms of strategic reserve. Maybe I'm wrong.
This video is made possible by Bitcoin trading cards, and I am pumped to have them as the first sponsor on my channel. I met Aladdin and the team back at Pacific Bitcoin 2022, and I'm not gonna lie, at the time I thought, okay, cool, a quirky little Bitcoin project, but little could I have imagined at the time how this project would capture imaginations. I've personally used these to orange pill people that I care about in my life. The art is stunning and features Bitcoin artists all around the world. You get high quality Bitcoin education on topics like economics and freedom as part of that, which makes this, as you can imagine, a really special project for me. And I'm not gonna lie, it makes you want to collect these. The community behind this is also truly insane. And I think they have a real shot at bringing Bitcoin to the mainstream. So if you're curious to check them out, head over to btc-tc.com where you can find the different series they've launched. And hey, if you do end up snagging some cards, you'll also get some Bitcoin rewards back on your purchase, powered by Jolts. Here's to ripping packs and stacking sats.
Okay, prediction number three, at least 10 additional corporations will adopt a Bitcoin treasury strategy similar to MicroStrategy. And we will indeed have one of the big tech companies, an additional tech company really, since Tesla continues to hold some Bitcoin on its balance sheet, that will adopt this as well. And so again, a lot of you listening may say, well, that doesn't sound very sort of exciting. And so yeah, maybe I'm bringing some bearish vibes to these predictions, but these things take time. We just saw Microsoft emphatically reject the proposal to evaluate a Bitcoin treasury, right? We don't even want to spend the time evaluating this thing. So I just think we're still a ways off we're still very, very, very early in this game. But no doubt you're going to see a number of corporations, particularly smaller ones, and they already follow that MicroStrategy playbook. You see Metaplanet in Japan, many others as well. So we're going to see that continue in 2025. Prediction number 4, US spot Bitcoin ETF inflows will exceed 150 billion. And for one, as we look at this table, I mean, it's just crazy, the AUM, assets under management, the sheer size of some of these, right? 500,000 Bitcoin, and just in iShares, BlackRock's Bitcoin Trust alone, we're talking hundreds of thousands in Fidelity's, tens of thousands in ARK. I mean, these are just big chunks of Bitcoin. And what's just truly extraordinary is to look at this top 5 list of US ETFs by inflows in 2024. Lo and behold, bronze medal number 3 here is IBIT. For context, that is totally crazy, right? Vanguard S&P 500, iShares Core S&P 500. These are like the biggest, most popular ETFs on planet Earth. They are the beneficiaries of an entire passive investing system. All these retirement funds, all these contributions, just passively allocating to these massive ETFs. And IBIT didn't have any of that passive apparatus yet. And so it was third place without any of that. And I think something that we will see in 2025 is at least a quarter to a half of wealth managers actually saying, hey, clients, I recommend a portion of your allocation to go into Bitcoin, 1% to 2%, whatever it is. So mind-boggling stuff that we saw in 2024 related to the ETFs. I think that very much continues as we go into 2025. Okay, prediction number 5. You will get Bitcoin-backed loans from a major U.S. financial institution. Again, some of these predictions are a little bit U.S.-centric, but for most of these, I think the same is true. Like you will see, something as well in Europe, etc. But we already have Cantor Fitzgerald, as a reminder, this past summer came out and announced their intentions to launch a Bitcoin financing business. Cantor Fitzgerald, as context, is one of only 24 primary dealer banks in the United States. All that means is that it is a massive and trusted financial institution. It is a true incumbent, and so they are gunning for this. We also just saw NYDIG in its latest investor letter. Those investor letters are always great, by the way. Ross Stevens brings some of the best perspective on Bitcoin out there, so I'd encourage you to check it out if you haven't already. But in NYDIG's latest investor letter, they appear to also have big plans. They already offer Bitcoin-backed loans. However, the interest rates are typically extremely uncompetitive. And so in order to make that more efficient and bring those rates lower and be more competitive, they're proposing something called float financing. So think of like the insurance industry, where they have insurance companies and reinsurance companies have all these premiums coming in. That is this pool of investable capital. Like I have these premiums coming in. I can do stuff with that money. And so what they're proposing here is to use the float, presumably in the Stone Ridge reinsurance business, of which NYDIG is a subsidiary underneath the Stone Ridge umbrella, and use that float to finance Bitcoin-backed loans. And they've already done a lot of asset-backed loans. Think of like a borrowing against your stock portfolio. The letter here makes the argument that, look, like Bitcoin's really not that different from stocks, at least in terms of its kind of volatility profile. And so they go into some of that analysis, but that's a big deal. And it's something I've been looking for a while. People being able to borrow fiat against their Bitcoin, not have to sell or worry about nonsense capital gains taxes. And think about what that does, right? You have less selling pressure if people can just borrow against their Bitcoin. That could include big miners who are historically massive sellers of Bitcoin. So you have less sell pressure and actually more fiat debasement because you're, creating additional IOU units of fiat basically. And so it's a pretty powerful flywheel. Like this is a big deal. Couple that with prediction number 6, which is that you will have institution-grade insurance products for Bitcoin. And in fact, sort of already not a prediction, Anchor Watch has just launched just that. They are a cover holder of Lloyd's of London, which is one of the leading, insurance firms on earth. And so again, whether it's individuals, high net worth individuals, businesses, companies, being able to have a custody solution where they at least partially own their keys, think of like a collaborative custody model with insurance in case something, God forbid, does happen. Like those are the ingredients and pieces that are going to make big institutions say, like, now we have no good reason not to proceed with this. So those two predictions that I just said, taken in combination, are a huge deal. So we'll have to see how that pans out. Okay, prediction number 7, MicroStrategy goes way higher in 2025 and meets all the criteria to enter the S&P 500. The only criteria they have not yet met is around income. And with the new accounting change that will go in place starting 2025, where corporations can basically book as income changes in the property value of Bitcoin on their balance sheet, which is what the case is for many other similar types of assets, that will likely lead MicroStrategy to checking all the boxes for the S&P 500. Why would that be a big deal? Well, think about why it's already a big deal that they're in the NASDAQ QQQ, right? This is an ETF that billions of dollars of that passive capital just, churning through insurance companies, pension funds, retirement plans, all just passively buying these ETFs. And now with MicroStrategy in the NASDAQ QQQ, anytime that money buys a share of QQQ, shares of the underlying constituent companies are also being bought. So imagine for something like the S&P 500, the most bought index on planet Earth. So again, I think MicroStrategy will check all the boxes, but I don't think they'll get it because I think there will be some interpretation of like, well, MicroStrategy is at this point sort of a, it's like a Bitcoin fund and we historically have only brought real operating businesses into the S&P 500. So that's my hunch. Again, a little bearish kind of jab here. But nonetheless, I think MicroStrategy continues its eye-watering performance and really demonstration of what is possible with a Bitcoin treasury strategy. Prediction number 8, the number of hodlers around the world goes over 250 million. Now, this is notoriously difficult to estimate. I'm currently using a roughly 100 million estimate from BitBo. So I think we see that expand significantly. Now, that doesn't mean self-custody holders necessarily, but people who through some means are hodling Bitcoin. And then lastly, on the adoption side, but certainly not least, is that my YouTube channel number of subscribers, I think in 2025 goes to 25,000. So a little bit over 2x where it is now. Be sure to share this video and help us get there. But that would be my prediction for the channel. Now, switching gears, let's move now to predictions about the Bitcoin network itself. And these are crucial health metrics that I cover a lot on my channel. But prediction number 10, I think the count of reachable nodes, so there's quite a few more non-reachable nodes, depending on the different kind of connection settings that they're all being used. But in terms of the reachable nodes, and you can see this dashboard at bitnodes.io, I think that grows to 25,000 from the about 20,000 today. Is it a coincidence that this is the same number prediction as my number of subscribers? I think not, but we'll see. I expect the number of nodes to continue to grow. Each new copy of the Bitcoin blockchain, of this distributed ledger, makes it that more difficult to kill and eradicate. And so it just makes Bitcoin stronger. If you've ever been curious yourself about running a Bitcoin node, I have a whole playlist on this channel that you can take a look at, starting from what is a node, why would I want to run one, to how do I build one myself, how do I get more plug and play version, and some of the different things that you can do with it. So check that out for sure. Prediction number 11, global hash rate will exceed the truly mind-boggling 1 zettahash. Okay, that is 1,000 exahashes. We are about to go off the scale when it comes to exahashes. We can see currently that we're sitting at about 775 or so exahashes per second. That is a measure of how much computing power, how much hashing power is going into finding the next block and settling transactions in the next block of the Bitcoin blockchain. So I think we break through that 1,000 exahash and go into zettahash territory as more and more people realize the synergies between Bitcoin mining and, say, stranded renewable energy sources or even waste energy from energy producers. This is just, we've been talking about it as a community for a very long time. I think 2025 is going to be a breakout year in terms of that broader awareness, and that's going to drive hash rate a lot higher. But importantly, I don't think we will see the needle yet move in terms of mining pool concentration. I was pulling these latest numbers from the Brains Mining Insights dashboard, which are quite good. And we currently see that about 56% of the global hash rate is between Foundry and Antpool. So Foundry in the US, Antpool in China. And that is pretty much exactly the same as a year ago. I did a video a year ago on this topic. So I was very curious to take a look back. And while the share of that hash rate has gone from Antpool to Foundry, the two of them taken together is about exactly the same as a year ago. And so what does that tell us? Despite a lot of really encouraging developments in 2024, whether it's ocean mining coming and incentivizing their constituent miners to create their own block templates, that is really what we mean when we say decentralized Bitcoin mining. And a block template basically determines what transactions you will package into a block, because right now, most miners are just sort of blindly delegating their hash rate to the pool. It's the pool that makes the decision about what transactions get in and don't get in for a block that is mined by that pool. So when you think about it, that's way fewer enforcement points when it comes to things like censorship resistance and all that sort of stuff. So make no mistake, like, this is a topic we should be talking more about. And despite the ocean minings, despite demand pool, public pool, and again, some of these are very early projects, so I expect to see them start to have more impact in 2025, but we have to acknowledge that it's still a huge battle to be fought. And so all the bid axes, all the kind of lottery miner type stuff. By the way, you can now even solo mine in lottery style on an Umbrel node using the public pool app that is now on there. Again, these are literally like lotteries. You know, you are buying a lottery ticket, but none of that has structurally moved the needle so far. So it'll be interesting to see in 2025, but I don't see that happening or changing a huge amount other than just the growth of that hash rate itself. Prediction number 12, the total amount of value settled on the Bitcoin blockchain in 2025 will exceed 25 trillion. That is up from roughly the 16.8 or so trillion that it did in 2024. And again, by way of context, that's roughly about as much as Visa settles. So like, that is a lot of value that Bitcoin is settling. I expect that to go way higher in 2025, particularly as we see it start to be used more at the sovereign nation state level for settling trade. Prediction number 13, the Lightning Network will continue its growth despite all the haters claiming that it's surely a dead project, right? Lightning is just one of those things that, yes, it has a lot of UX challenges, particularly when it comes to self-custodial usage of the Lightning Network. I have covered many, many tutorials on this channel of different wallets with different trade-offs and different things like that. My company, Jolts, is working on some really, really cutting edge stuff with the Jolts wallet. So be sure to stay tuned for more on that very soon. But nonetheless, despite these UX challenges, the Lightning Network continues to grow. There was that great report back in 2023. I hope we will see a similar one for 2024 from the likes of River Financial. And while getting some of these statistics is difficult, I'm predicting that Lightning will get to a point of settling $1 billion in value each and every month. Now, again, that's still peanuts compared to some of the big payment networks out there, but that represents really, really strong growth. You have crypto payment processors like CoinGate that have published some great stats on what they're seeing in terms of Lightning adoption, and it's really encouraging stuff. And I think a big part of that growth is going to be fueled by things like Taproot assets, which brings stablecoins to the Lightning Network. And again, my company Jolts has done some really pioneering work there. We're partnered up with a Brazilian company, Yulin, who is the issuer behind DPix, which is a Brazilian reais-backed stablecoin that's used by individuals to more privately onboard to Bitcoin. So kind of a cool use case for stablecoins. I know those are controversial within the community, but again, having all the power of settling on Bitcoin and all the security properties therein with the utility of enabling people to denominate their payments in whether it's Bitcoin, whether it's stablecoins, whatever, giving them that utility, I think that's going to be a winning combination. I think that's what's going to take the Lightning Network an order of magnitude plus higher in usage, but time will tell. Lastly, on the network side of things, prediction number 14, I think we see a continuation of concern growing around a potential future chain split, right? And this role of governance, right? Is there a power vacuum in the core contributors, or should they even be, having a certain level of influence and whatnot? Do they have that level of influence? Ossifiers versus, hey, we need more change, we need covenants, we need these different things. I think that reaches a head in 2025. And in a later prediction, I will share how I think that resolves. But no doubt, I think we're going to continue to see a lot of discussion around Bitcoin governance. And it is healthy that we're having those discussions. I just did a video, if you want to check it out, on Lynn Alden and others' recent report around Bitcoin governance, which goes into the different stakeholders, how governance and consensus forms. I would really invite you to check that out because I think that's going to be a more and more salient conversation point as we head into 2025. Okay, let's move to the next category of predictions, and this one is around technology, and I'm going to rattle a lot of these off a little bit more quickly. But prediction number 15, we will see the TVL of Bitcoin in other L2s or other L1s even, right? So this could be like wrapped Bitcoin on Ethereum or Bitcoin locked up in the Lightning Network or all these other kind of Bitcoin L2s. I think we see that go to 500,000 Bitcoin, roughly double from where it is today. And again, this was a huge VC trend in 2024. Bitcoinlayers.org is a great resource for those looking to learn more about all these different L2s and like, are they even an L2? To spoil the surprise, most are not. But nonetheless, you had a ton of money come into these things, and I think you'll have a lot of Bitcoin flow into these. I think a lot of this will end in tears for VCs. I think there is so much money that went into all these nonsense Bitcoin L2s that will end in tears for both VCs and users, but it probably won't be until 2026 that we see that. But nonetheless, you're going to see as an overall trend, TVL, Bitcoin, this amazing asset being moved and deposited into all these other networks. And ultimately, I think that's good for Bitcoin, the asset, right? Showing demand for the underlying asset. Prediction number 16, Bolt 12 is fully rolled out across the Lightning Network. Really what that means at this point is that LND finally adopts it. You have it in the other major Lightning implementations. For those not familiar with Bolt 12, I've done a whole video on it, but it brings a number of great UX and even privacy benefits related to the Lightning Network. So a pretty big deal. You've already seen some early implementations of this. I think Strike has implemented support for Bolt 12 and a number of other wallets. So I think you will see this fully rolled out, and that will be a very good thing when it comes to Lightning UX, that in combination with things like Lightning addresses, some of what we're cooking at Jolts. I think you're gonna have like a really nice user experience, even in a self-custodial fashion. Prediction number 17, Tether will formally announce that it is issuing USDT as a Taproot asset. So Tether, the OG stablecoin, started out on Bitcoin on the Omni layer, what's called the Omni layer, and that still exists to this day. But of course, the vast majority of stablecoin activity has flown over to other ecosystems like Ethereum, like Tron, like Solana. But I think now with this technological catalyst of Taproot assets and being able to bring stablecoins back to Bitcoin and lift them up into the Lightning Network, I think we will see a big announcement from Tether this year that again will draw up a lot of excitement about the Lightning Network more generally. Prediction number 18, I think Bitcoin payments will be fully integrated across Square's POS solutions and solutions for merchants. Today, merchants can convert a portion of their sales into Bitcoin using a integration with Cash App, of course, but I think you will see that more widespread, and so people will be able to pay with Bitcoin and merchants will be able to flexibly convert back and forth. So I think that'll be the first step in some of these bigger entities integrating actual Bitcoin payments, right? Remember all the big announcements from Jack Mallers, right? Who, again, I respect, but like, he's a good marketer. And I remember all the promises about, oh, you can pay in Bitcoin and Walmart and Blackhawk and all these massive payment processors. No doubt a lot of that work is still ongoing, but none of that came to fruition. And so we should be really honest about where we are in relation to Bitcoin as a medium of exchange. We are still incredibly, incredibly early days. Prediction number 19, eCash and other last mile payment technologies will largely fail to take off, or there will be really niche use cases like eCash on Nostr and things like that. I think the possible exception, I'm sort of hedging my bets here, is Arc. I do think Arc has a very real chance of being very interesting and getting sort of adoption. But eCash, like even Fedi to some degree, I just don't think we're going to see adoption take off in any sort of meaningful way. And I think people will begrudgingly accept that Lightning is the network effect. Obviously, all these other solutions, are sort of built in some ways on top of Lightning. But again, not trying to be a hater, just sort of calling it like I see it. All these projects are ultimately good for Lightning. They're good for Bitcoin. But I personally think the story around non-custodial Lightning, which a lot of these other projects seem to have sort of taken for granted that like, we're just not going to get there. I'm not quite ready to give that fight up yet. And that is a big part of what we're working on again at Jolts. Let's see. Prediction number 20, what will have a breakout year is ZK Tech. I recently did a video on zero knowledge technology coming to Bitcoin, whether it's Cetrea, whether it's Strata from Alpin Labs. There's a number of projects now that are really making incredible strides, real strides towards bringing zero knowledge technology to Bitcoin. Check out that other video for why that is such a big deal, both from scalability as well as privacy. No matter what kind of Bitcoin user you are, that technology, I think, is unambiguously useful. Okay, people may hate on this, but prediction number 21, I think Runes will make a big surprise comeback after the flurry of activity it saw early in 2024. If you look at activity now, it looks quite dead. The same thing happened with Ordinals. So do not fade speculation. The reason I put this in this list is that same speculation is ultimately what's going to help drive Bitcoin higher. The sequence of that is sort of reverse. You're going to have Bitcoin go higher and then something like Runes and these more, far down the risk curve types of things. But make no mistake and don't fade speculation. But I think Runes is going to have a huge year in 2025. And I think we'll also play into this realization that some people are realizing of like, wait a second, like the things that have done the best, so far at least in this cycle, are Bitcoin and like literally meme coins. And this latest season of degenning speculation, whatever, I actually think is a little more honest. People are like, well, we're not, we're investing in this L1 token because of the technology and like blah, 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 blah. It's like, no, I'm like investing in this meme because I like gambling. Like that's a more honest thing. Humans have gambled for basically all of our history. There's no reason to expect that to stop now. And so anyway, I think we're going to see this like interesting story. No doubt there will be an alt season, okay? Like, I think there's going to be an alt season like there always is, but I think it's going to be more muted this time, and it's going to lead people to be like, oh, snap, there's Bitcoin, and then there's everything else. I think that sort of bucketing is going to become clearer in 2025, and things like Runes are going to play into that realization. Prediction number 22, I think we finally reached consensus around at least basic covenants. Be sure you're subscribed. I will definitely be doing some videos on this and also all these other topics. So be sure you're subscribed either way. But I think we're going to reach consensus, and I think activation will start maybe late in 2025. Activation window will stretch into 2026. So I don't think we'll get the actual update itself until 2026. But that would be my prediction. I think that's going to come to a head along with that prior prediction around ossifiers versus, change proponents. I land in that latter camp. I think there's many proposals out there that have been thoroughly battle tested that would unambiguously help Bitcoin while really minimizing the risk of, other things happening. But we're going to have to see. But that's my 2 cents. Prediction number 23. I think Nostr will continue to grow. I think it will grow to over 100K daily active users. You could go to stats.nostr.ban and see where that is now. But we just saw some of this stuff around Elon sort of censoring, MAGA proponents about the H-1B visa stuff. Like Elon, let's be very clear. Obviously, a guy who's achieved an incredible amount, incredible businessman, entrepreneur, and technologist, but like he's not God. People worship him as such. He has this double standard of, hey, I'm promoting free speech, and he clearly himself has violated those principles. So I think we'll see more examples of this kind of tyrannical Musk that comes out in 2025, and I think that will help drive more people to the more censorship-resistant platform that is Nostr. And also, we will continue to see a bevy of other use cases beyond just sort of a Twitter replacement for Nostr. In fact, I think those are going to be the biggest use cases, not just a Twitter replacement, but some of the other things. And I recently did a video on Nostr that I invite you to check out as well. But I think like lightning, Nostr is going to continue its grind. And I'm really, really excited to see some of the freedom technology being built on both. Prediction 24. We end 2025 with quantum resistant cryptography ready for Bitcoin. Not activated yet, not merged in yet. But 2025, we will see this topic become a real thing. And we've, haven't thought about it really that much. You had Google Willow come out recently that threw a lot of questions around, oh my gosh, is, Bitcoin doomed? And we're still no doubt very early. And a lot of the people kind of crying about that, that was much, much, much overblown. But it's interesting to see, as we can see in this Twitter post here, the US government is already posting about post-quantum cryptography standards with the intention to deprecate support for some of the existing methods between 2030 and 2035. So that is not a long way away. And while I think that is probably conservative, it's also something that we cannot rest on our laurels for. The good news is that work is already being done. There is an entity, Surmount Systems. CryptoQuick on Twitter is involved with this. Work is being done, and even a draft BIP or Bitcoin improvement proposal has been introduced to bring signatures that are based on post-quantum cryptography that could work with only a soft fork. So really, really encouraging progress. And so again, to all the naysayers that are like, oh, quantum is going to break Bitcoin. It's like, okay, it's, I think, being recognized as an appropriately serious threat and actions being taken. And I think we end 2025 in a really encouraging spot for that. Prediction 25, finally, we get to price. Okay, right? I don't like to predict price. Who the hell knows where price goes? But I think we go between 200 and 300K this cycle. Let's call it 250K as a sort of midpoint. A lot of that is based on looking at the power law. Again, no model is perfect, but I really do like the power law. People like Fred Krueger have talked a lot about it, Giovanni. I do think it is a more elegant and intuitive model than, things like Plan B and all that sort of stuff. But again, just looking at what we typically see in terms of cycle highs in relation to the sort of fair price of some of these models, that's kind of where I'm getting my number from. I also think the cycle continues. Long live the cycle. There will never be a super cycle, or there will be, but it's not now. But I think it's a much more muted drawdown. I think we draw down probably 40, 50% max. Just keep in mind that yes, a lot of patient long-term capital is indeed coming into Bitcoin, but there is nonetheless still a ton of short-term speculative capital in as well. So I still think we're going to see a big drawdown, but I think that drawdown will bottom around where we are now, like in the 90s to maybe a little over 100. Like I think that's going to be the next bear market bottom. So do with that information as you will, never financial advice. That being said, as a contingency, if we do, and again, I predicted earlier that the US will not implement any sort of Bitcoin buying plan. But if we see that, make no mistake, all bets are off and we are going directly after the market cap of gold, putting Bitcoin at a price of roughly 850,000. I truly, genuinely think that is possible, but very, very, very unlikely. So there you go, 25 predictions for 2025. What do you agree with? What do you disagree with? What would you like to see content on across any of these themes in the future? But I hope you found this useful and insightful. If you did, you already know what to do. Give this video a like. Use the share feature underneath this video. That really does help get this to a broader audience. And if you were so enamored with this content, you want to donate to a pleb, which really does help me continue to make these videos, you can use the super thanks feature built directly into YouTube. Or my preference, you can zip some sats my way over the Lightning Network to my Lightning address, ragermajor@getalby.com. And for those of you that want to get in touch with me, I'm now working one-on-one with a number of clients, helping them with all sorts of things from taking self-custody to building a multi-sig, inheritance planning, privacy best practices, running a node, and more. You can reach out to me at vita.io/IanMajor. But for now, we'll go ahead and leave things here. This was already a longer video. For those of you that stayed and watched all the way through, I appreciate you always. And to a very exciting 2025, what will we see? We'll just have to wait and see. Until next time, my friends, I'll see you then.